My name is Ted Baker. I'm the CEO of the Muncie Innovation Connector and a proud board member of the ITIA. It is my privilege this morning to introduce Representative Trey Hollingsworth. Representative Hollingsworth represents Indiana's 9th district, a wide-ranging district comprised of small businesses, suburban communities, hardworking farmers, and striving students, all united by their focus on how we collectively build a more prosperous, safer, and strong America. A small business owner, Trey began renovating and rehabilitating abandoned industrial sites after graduating from business school. And even during the depths of the recession, as other U.S. businesses moved overseas, Trey's business found opportunities for companies to expand, produce, and hire right here at home. Later, in 2008, Trey partnered with businessmen and chemists to start an aluminum remanufacturing operation in Indiana. Today, that facility, with the help of many hard-working Hoosiers, has produced over, this is a big number, 1.8 billion pounds of aluminum. Trey was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives on November 8, 2016, and took his oath of office joining the 115th Congress on January 3, 2017. In Congress, Trey is committed to reinvigorating the economy and enabling businesses to start and expand right here at home. We like that. And he has authored bills to help expand access to venture capital, and he serves on the House Finance Services Committee and the Investor Protection, Entrepreneurship, and Capital Markets Subcommittee, as well as the Artificial Intelligence Task Force. Trey and his wife, Kelly, and their son, Joseph, live in Jeffersonville, near where Kelly grew up and where her siblings and parents live. Let's give a great ITI welcome to Representative Trey Hollingsworth. Thank
you. Well, good morning. I'm delighted to be with you today. I'm really excited about this conference and excited to see so many faces out to talk about these issues. I know you've got as you said, rock star lineup of individuals to come talk about a wide variety of issues. I wanted to talk about what I've been doing in DC and how I think DC could support the work that you're doing right here at home instead of standing in the way of that work. When I was first elected and I got to DC, I found something interesting. In DC, there's this almost dogma that small businesses are the most important aspect of the U.S. economy. And that really derives from this belief that small businesses are A, the engines of employment growth, B, the engines of innovation. But as it turns out, when you decompose the data a little bit more and peer a little bit deeper into it, it's not small businesses that are the engines of employment growth, but it's new businesses, which by and large happen to be small. But that small and subtle shift in language in exactly what we're trying to do means big shifts in the public policy architecture surrounding how we create economic growth. And what's really, really important about this is that we should be focused on how do we create more new businesses across the country, not just support existing small businesses. And that's really what I focused on from day one in Congress. First aspect of this is making sure that capital formation works at every stage of a company's life cycle, from Series A all the way to IPO, ensuring firms have the access to capital such that if they build a better mousetrap, they can get that mousetrap out to consumers. If they build a worse mousetrap, they shouldn't get the capital to get that mousetrap out to consumers. Now, this has been a big push of House Financial Services, ensuring that we not only expand access for companies to get capital, but also expand access for investors to be able to invest in those companies, widen platforms, so a wider variety, whether that's mom and pop on Main Street or whether that's large institutional players in New York, get access to the firms that are going to create the technologies of the future. The second big thing I work on every single day in DC is basic research. Ensuring your federal government is investing dollars through institutions all the way across this country, many of which sit right here in Indiana, such that they can do the basic research to create the platforms for commercialization of the next generation of technologies. I believe one of this country's most important competitive advantages against every other country around the world is our unbelievable universities and colleges. the unbelievable talent that comes through them from a student perspective, but also the amazing research that these professors are doing day in and day out. America has been a leader of technology for the last 70 years, and much of that started in basic research that somebody thought was going nowhere, that someone didn't even have an idea what that basic application would be years down the line. But it's turned out our most profitable, our most paradigm-shifting technologies are derived from that basic research. Third big piece I work on every single day is creating a public policy architecture that provides you with more certainty. What I hear from firms day in and day out that come up to DC is not, I don't want any regulation at all, I don't want any taxation at all. What I hear is, I want certainty of regulation. What crypto is a security, right? What crypto is a commodity? What crypto is a currency? Certainty around regulation, certainty around taxation, so that you, frankly, can invest the massive amount of dollars it takes to commercialize new technology in an environment where you're certain at least what your share of the rewards are going to be relative to government. Where at least you're certain what the legal and regulatory ramifications of what you're doing are going to be. We've got too many companies at the bleeding edge of technology that feel like they are operating in an environment where the rug can be pulled out of them at any time. Where not only is the game very fluid, but the rules around the game are growingly very fluid. That's a difficult environment for nascent and infantile technologies to become those next generation of technologies. And the last big piece is, I'm sure, something you're going to talk about all day today. It's talent. How do we grow more talent? How do we educate more talent? How do we ensure we retain more talent? How do we compete for talent to come here from around the world? And this takes every aspect of our educational system, from K through 12 to our colleges and universities, to how do we reform our immigration system, our work visa programs. This country has the opportunity to attract not only the best and brightest inside our own country, but from everywhere else around the globe. People want to be here for the opportunities that are here. We shouldn't turn our back on that, and making sure we have an immigration system that reflects that which is best in us is really important to me, because that can be a driver for those next generation of technologies. I like to believe that every one of those technologies is going to come from right here in this country, but it's not going to come from someone who might be born in this country. It's going to come from all sorts of walks of life. It's a diversity of views. It's a heterogeneity of perspectives that leads to great technological innovation. And I want to make sure this country continues to be a melting pot for that wide variety of views, that diversity of backgrounds, that heterogeneity of perspectives, so that we can build that better, brighter future right here and spread it around the world. Now, that's what I came to talk to you about, what I'm doing. Jennifer tells me you're an inquisitive and curious bunch, so I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys had for me. What's going on in Washington, what's not going on in Washington, or anything else that you wanted to talk about. Or we're going to awkwardly stare at each other for 10 minutes, and that's going to be weird for everybody, and nobody wants that. Who's going to be bold? We're tech crowd. There we go. Thank you for being bold and audacious. First question.
My name's Renee Becker-Blau. I'm president of First Indiana Robotics. I have some excellent talent that has all of the employability, STEM skills, mentorship skills, and we just happen to build robots as part of that program. How do I get, I'm tired of my students going to, being born and raised in Indiana, going through these amazing, the high schools that we have, these colleges that we have,
Indeed.
and then getting, caught up in the East Coast, West Coast, tech market, thinking that there is an opportunity in Indiana.
Yeah.
I tell them that if they become a tech, individual in Indiana, that they are going to be leading, this tech industry in 3 to 5 years.
Yes.
How do I connect my talented students
Yes.
with employers who will keep them in this state?
I love that. This is the question we should be asking. We educate a tremendous amount of talent, and then we dispatch them to other areas of the country to pour that talent into the creation of unbelievable organizations, unbelievable technologies. Retaining that talent should be a whole of government effort here in the state. right? Like you said, we are not devoid of talent. We are not going to lose a talent foot race. We are just shipping our talent all the way across the country. And the state needs to make a concerted effort from day one to focus on how we build a tech ecosystem right here, right? All I hear everywhere I go is that we are on the cusp of building a tech environment, from the capital that is necessary, from the talent that is necessary, from the firms that can employ that talent. But how do we accelerate that? How do we grow that? How do we ensure that every single piece of that is working together to build the same ecosystem that exists on the West Coast, to build the same ecosystem that exists on the East Coast and down in Austin today? We can do that. There's no reason why we can't do that, but it is going to require a whole of government approach here and a real focus on entrepreneurship and technology at the state level, not just workforce development and not just economic development, but again, this misnomer that every business has an equal impact on the community, every business has an equal impact on Hoosiers, focusing on those that can have a real up leverage in the impact they're going to have, and that entrepreneurial spirit that we want to build right here at Indiana. That's number one. Number two, you guys are already doing it. You're coming to conferences just like this. You're part of groups just like this that are getting together and collaborating and talking about these same issues. I guarantee you, the question that you asked, everyone else in here is thinking the same thing. Everyone else in here is working on that same problem, maybe from a different perspective and from a different angle, coming together and talking about these issues, coming together and ensuring that these issues are forefront in our minds is really important. Number three, as you know, we have a great number of challenges in higher education generally. And one of those challenges that we've got is this misalignment of interests and incentives that happens far too frequently. Right? If you're judged in U.S. News and World Report as to how high your college ranks by the starting salary of students that exit that college, won't they be incentivized to move to Chicago where the starting salary is higher, albeit the cost of living is higher, but the starting salary is higher, right? If you are that university or college, you're incentivized to push kids to Boston, to push kids to San Francisco. It might not be in their best interest, but it's in the best interest of the university and their rankings. Making sure that we have in higher education and alignment of interest where they are focused on delivering results for the kids and for the communities in which they sit, the states in which they sit, which, by the way, dispatch money to them every single year from taxpayers, is really, really important. And the last thing I'll say is I believe leadership matters. I believe leadership matters at the state level. And having someone who is focused on that day in and day out and focused on recruiting talent and focused on retaining talent is enormously important. And not just the number of jobs created, the quality of jobs created, not just the number of companies that show up, but the quality of companies that show up. And the energy and zeal that needs to be a part of this is hugely important. Talent is the oil of the 21st century. Making sure we have more of it here, a deeper reserve here, should be priority number one for government. And there's never been a better time to do so, right? People are thinking about, I can live anywhere and build companies anywhere compared to what it was just 3 or 4 years ago. The need to be in Boston is far less than it was 3 years ago. We need to make sure we get not our fair share, but our unfair share of those companies and those talents. That is a great question. In the back. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead. Yeah, you've got the mic.
I do. Jeremy Miller, Lionfish Cybersecurity. So can you make it that it's as easy for a entrepreneur, a new company, to raise capital or get capital and work with the state as it is for a nonprofit?
Right.
So it seems like you have to be a nonprofit to get most of the grants. You got to be that. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, well, what I can speak to is what I hear from entrepreneurs all the time is it feels increasingly difficult to get the capital I need in order to be able to grow, start, expand my business. And it is hugely important from a federal level and from a state level that all of the roadblocks that stand in the way from these businesses being able to start from an idea in your head to become the Apple of the next 20 years, we get all of those out of the way because that is the engine that drives the economy forward. Again, young, new businesses are the engines of employment growth in the future, are the engines of wage growth, are the engines of innovation, and getting every single one of those roadblocks out of the way. And like you said, sometimes it's not, I can't get to the capital. Sometimes it's the paperwork required to get through, the number of times I have to reach out to agencies just to get whatever the filing is, et cetera. All of those things stand in the way and stand between you and being able to focus on your customer, you and being able to focus on your technology, you and being able to focus on your business. So doing everything we can to truly live up to kind of that mantra of a state that works, not just a state that works for a select few, not a state that works for very large, super large corporations, but a state that works for entrepreneurs as well should be a mindset that we bring to every aspect of government. Because like you said, it's not just, I can't get the checks written. It's that, I had to hire somebody for all of the paperwork and compliance and filings that I had to do. That's one fewer person that I could hire to do engineering, to do coding, to do tech work, one fewer person to handle sales calls and grow my business. These are real allocations of capital and making sure that they are going towards the highest, most profitable, and highest returns should be the priority of state government, right? Driving smaller businesses forward needs to be our focus. Yeah.
Good morning, Congressman. Thanks for coming up.
Of course.
It's a nice drive, I know, especially now that the highway's about done. My name is Bob Kobeck. I've got a small tech company on the north side of Indianapolis, and
Right.
I have a point I'd like to make and then a question.
Perfect.
The point is that I want to make is that you made a commitment when you first ran for public office that you would limit your own terms. And I have to tell you that I'm may or may not like your politics, that's immaterial, but the fact that you're keeping your word is very, very honorable, and thank you for that. Appreciate that. The question is, coming up right after you, we have a panel on privacy. And particularly, we'll be talking about different pieces of privacy legislation and regulation around the country. And one of the questions, one of the issues that we have in Indiana and other states without privacy regulations is why do we have to do anything at all? Why aren't the feds, why isn't the legislature on a federal level taking this issue up? Now, there have been a couple of bills introduced, but they seem to be sliding away with a lot of other stuff. Are you at all up to speed on any of that?
Yeah. Number one, on the term limits, I really appreciate that. Like we talked about with higher education, like you know from business every single day, alignment of incentives matters, right? If your reps don't live like you, I promise you that you are not going to get the policies that reflect your values and what you deal with every single day. The biggest and most important thing we can do to get better policies out of Washington is to change Washington in the way it makes policy, not just fix policies at the end of the manufacturing line of policy. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Second piece, I have done a ton of work in DC on data privacy. This is a hugely important issue, especially with the I'll put in quotation marks, leadership, or at least the first mover of California, of Europe, and the fact that we're going to end up, absent federal preemption, with 50 different states having 50 different rules, having 50 different compliance sets for organizations that want to operate from coast to coast and from sea to shining sea. It is really important to me that we figure out from a federal level how we balance the interests of consumers and their desire to control more about their data and to control where that goes, but also help consumers understand the tremendous value to them that this data has in being used by corporations, whether that's MasterCard data mining to ensure that your charges are in fact your charges, or whether that's Uber and being able to track your location such that they can get a car to you faster. There's a lot of aspects of this, and right now the unfortunate aspect is that it is caught between House Financial Services, which believes that they have jurisdiction over data, and ENC, and they believe that they have jurisdiction over data. And there are two different bills that exist, and they are mostly the same, partly different, but that partial difference in Washington, D.C. has created a chasm that people are unwilling to jump over. I think there's a simple rubric that Washington could come up with about data that kind of talks about, puts into 4 different categories, what data can be kept, what data you have total control over, what data a corporation has and has more control over as well. And I think that rubric is something that we could apply to a wide variety of settings and get to a federal government policy that exists from sea to shining sea again, which I think is going to far exceed, in my view, the value of every state coming up with slightly different or very different compliance regimens around data. And it is hugely important that we get this right because, as you know, probably better than I, AI runs on massive data sets. and the opportunity for us to be able to aggregate and utilize massive data sets, whether that's in the biological spaces or in the pure technological spaces, is hugely important to us continuing to build a technological edge on our competitors that do have access to those data sets, such as China. Great.
Greetings, my name is Joel Hungate. I work in healthcare administration.
Great.
So driving innovation in healthcare, which
Yeah.
Lord knows we need that. Thank you, first of all, for your time today. Question around, we think about healthcare as one of the gears inside of innovation, being a multifactorial problem,
Yes.
right? If you're trying to attract and retain talent, if you're trying to create a sense of place,
Yes.
we've leaned into this concept of the infrastructure of well-being. So I wonder from a policy standpoint, when you work in committees and subcommittees that often get more siloed and insulated as
Yeah.
you go down, how do you ensure cross-pollination to think about the levers in other capacities, whether it be the rising cost of healthcare that an employer would have to assume, or when they look at Indiana and they see the incidence and prevalence of chronic conditions, for instance. What is that doing from an economic development standpoint, and how are those levers affecting the decisions you talk about in committees and subcommittees?
Yeah.
How does that generalist approach or cross-pollination feed into the decisions that you make on the policy front, taking into account the big picture?
It's a thoughtful question. I don't want to burst anybody's bubble about how well their federal government operates, but the reality is multifactorial problems are very difficult for Congress to address, right? Because as you well articulated, everyone's immediately subdivided. The moment you arrive into committees, everyone becomes a great expert on their particular aspect of committees, and very few people are taking that big step out to say, hey, how can we approach this in a whole effort, as opposed to just solving this one problem that often has unintended side effects, often has side effects that maybe were intended but didn't work out exactly as intended. And ensuring that we kind of take that step back is really, really important. There's been a concerted effort in Washington recently to push back against that very, very narrow specialization. And a lot of that comes through task force, right? Task force that operate across committees, that bring different members from different committees to talk about these issues. And I think you were exactly right to say more and more technology underpins a lot of this. And whether you're operating in the healthcare delivery space or the healthcare research space, technological growth, technological productivity improvements are going to drive so much of what we do going forward, and having a lot more focus on that underlying clear problem could yield tremendous results, right? Because so much of what we do is this very narrow answer, and that narrow answer ends up creating 3 or 4 more problems. And this is some of the challenge that we have, being the huge federal government, the behemoth in the room, that even a small distortion by the federal government ends up changing the entire landscape, right? I have this plaque in my office that I frequently point out to people that walk in, and it says, "Government, if you don't like our problems, just wait till you see our solutions," right? And I think we frequently need to remember that, right? That the bar should be high for government intervention in a space. The bar should be high for government distorting private sector interests or private sector incentives. And we need to make sure that we enable you to do more of what you know how to do, enable you to do more of what you're already doing, instead of allowing government to stand in the way of those things. I'm a big believer that the tremendous standard of living growth that this country has seen over the last 240 years, this very core narrative to who we are, that the future is going to be better than the past, and it's up to us to make it so, is not because of 535 yay-hos in Washington, D.C., right? No one says this country is great because of those guys up there. It's great because some Americans are waking up every single day coming up with brand new ideas that change the game for all the rest of us. And I want them to have the incentives to do so. I want them to get as rich as they want to get doing it, because the benefit to this country is tremendous. That productivity growth that we've realized over 240 years has not been because Washington allocated capital, not because Washington came up with new ideas and mandated them out. It's because someone woke up and said, I can do this better. And they had the freedom in this country, the access to capital, the ability to do that. I want to make sure that we can do that more frequently than we are right now, in more areas, in more ways, including an ever more diverse number of people than ever before. Yeah.
Thanks again for your time this morning. Landon Young with Elevate Ventures.
Great.
You mentioned the importance of higher eds. In this space, in June, we gathered 25 higher ed institutions. They're
Yes.
innovation and entrepreneurship directors and faculty. What message would you give them to activate them here in the state and to help them relate at the federal level to accomplish innovation goals and entrepreneurship goals here?
What message would I give them? I think the thing that I would tell them is that this is the problem. What they do every day is what we all need to be thinking about every single day. I don't want them going back to their cubicles, to their offices, to the big fancy university buildings and thinking this isn't something that everyone is thinking about or everyone should be thinking about. I want them to act with the level of urgency, the level of importance that this issue demands. Everywhere I go across the state, every single hour of every single day, every business, every nonprofit, every civic organization is talking about talent. How do I get them in the door? How do I keep them here? How do I ensure I can grow them once here? How do I ensure that the next generation of talent is coming up? What they're doing is what everyone is talking about. It is the problem facing the state, facing all of the states going forward. And some states have really figured it out. Right? I think we should all note when Intel went to Columbus, they did not say, we went to Columbus because it was the cheapest place for us to do business anywhere. They did not go to Columbus because they said, hey, the agencies are the most responsive. What did they say they went to Columbus for? There is a talent pipeline here from kindergarten through higher education that we can rely on not just next week, not next month, not next year, but for decades to come. And there is an effort underway in Columbus to invest in that talent, to grow that talent, and to ensure that pipeline starts here, but also ends here. And we want to be a part of that. More and more businesses, as they make their economic development decisions, are thinking about that very same thing. And I know we as a state have prided ourselves on we want to be the lowest cost place. I want to be the best place. Some of the best place is being low cost. Some of the best place is making sure government, alongside universities and colleges, are investing in the things we want to be excellent about. I am a free market guy. I am a limited government guy, but I believe limited government should be excellent at the things we need to be excellent at. And educating our kids, building that talent pipeline, enabling companies to grow right here because they can find the people, that's what government should be excellent at, full stop. So what I would tell them is what they are doing is all I hear about every single day. What they are doing is the gating issue to how fast this state's going to grow relative to Ohio, relative to Kentucky, relative to Texas, relative to Arizona. And that differential was once very, very high. That differential has shrunk. What are we doing to change that? What are we doing to accelerate what she talked about, what he talked about, what others are talking about to ensure that we get to those better outcomes faster? Because this is not a matter of are we creating a few more jobs at the margin? This is about what we will be 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 20 years from a state and our standard of living. That's what they're working on.
One more question. It's from me.
Oh, great. He's my
you're-
plant. This is the easy one.
No.
What's my favorite color? Yeah.
Yeah, talking about Congress. No, I'm just teasing. In your opening comments, you talked about startups being
Yes.
the vital link.
Yes.
There probably isn't a person in this room in some way or shape or form working on how do we increase the number of startups in our state, in our
Right.
communities. From your perspective, being in Washington and then knowing what you know in this state, what can we do better, different, more of to encourage young entrepreneurs, not just from a very young age all the way through their college? What can we do?
Yeah.
What are we missing? Indiana still ranks very low on startups.
Right.
And so we need to bring that number up. And so just from your perspective, is there anything that we can do?
Well, we have to do things,
Thank you.
right? I mean, the answer is we have to do more and we have to put effort in here. Number one, admitting you have a problem is part of the problem, right? What did Peter Drucker say? That which has attention, that which measured gets attention, gets done. Making sure we understand collectively that we have to focus on this. This is the engine that our kids' standard of living is going to be driven by 10, 15, 20 years down the road, I think is the first piece. Second piece, I would say, they are going elsewhere because the opportunity set elsewhere is better. They are not going elsewhere because they are being compelled to do so. And making sure we get everyone in the room to talk about how we build that same ecosystem in rooms just like this with people just like this right here across the state is enormously important. But that ecosystem is every single piece, from the VC piece, right, from the angel piece, to the infrastructure pieces, to the education pieces. All of these things working together is how ecosystems are built. It's what creates tremendous opportunity for young kids to be able to change the world in their 20s. Change the way we work, change the way we live, change the way we drive, change the way we operate. So many of the Gen Zers and millennials that I talk to, they want that, right? They want that passion. They want that opportunity to have an enormous impact on their world in their particular spaces. We have the chance to give that to them, and we have in many areas a nascent ecosystem that's really building, but it is going to take consistency of effort, constancy of purpose to make sure we continue to build that out, that ecosystem gets stronger. I applaud the work that's being done in associations just like this, and particularly this one, in bringing these issues to the forefront. I don't believe that the answer is, there's a silver bullet, here's the gap, fill that gap, we do it, right? I don't believe that. I think ecosystems are tough to build. They require a lot of effort. They require state government effort. They require large corporate effort. They require VC effort, right? They require higher ed effort. Putting all of those things together and then demanding that they accelerate it faster and faster, I think is the answer to that. We can build this here. Don't let anyone tell you that, oh, it has to be in San Francisco because the weather's so nice. Oh, it has to be in Boston because everybody loves snow, right? It has to be in Austin because, gosh, it's hot down there in the summer. There is no reason why this can't exist here except a huge amount of effort by a large number of people in a diverse set of organizations. We have to commit to build that, and we have to work on it every single day in meetings and individually to get to the results that we want.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for gathering today. Thank you for having these conversations. I've really enjoyed getting to know so many of you. I really appreciate the effort that you're undertaking to make sure these dialogues are not one-off, but consistent dialogues about how we improve state policy architecture and federal policy architecture so that the future is better than the past, right here in our state, right here in our country. Thanks for being here today.